discuss it if there's any difficulty. And you can ask questions, all the questions you want, because now we are not in knowledge group. On the same basis, there would be no difficulty in understanding why the physiological functionings of the body help to determine the mind's psychological actions. I'll stop here. What is the basis he's talking about? The basis he has examined first, is the world only force, like the materialist is saying? And then he says that doesn't satisfy you, because you see that there is a variation and law is not always maintained. Nah? So if matter is the only reality, it is fixity, there should be absolute law. But there is no law in the physical world. There is law, but there is also, it is contradicting its own law. As usual, my famous example of cat producing 5 kittens, if there is a law, they should absolutely be the same, but they are not. One is colored brown, one is colored white, one is colored black. So there is a variation. How do I account for that variation? So Sri Aurobindo says, let us try another hypothesis, another basis. And that basis is consciousness is the main creator. We admit that there is force and matter at the lower level, but it is consciousness that is creating all these things and enters into whatever it has made. This is the basis on which we are examining. And when you go on that basis, you see that everything is very, very understandable. Okay, that's what he's saying. On the same basis that consciousness is the creator and force is there at the lower levels, there would be no difficulty in understanding why the physiological functionings of the body help to determine the mind's psychological actions. Okay. The physiological functionings are law. They follow laws. Okay. But the psychological aspects are, there is an element of freedom and consciousness. Okay. So how to explain that? Both are there. And that's why the physiological, the stomach will work in a particular way, the heart will particular way it will learn. It cannot work in any other way except what is its own nature. That's a law. But there is also a choice. Okay, and that consciousness is there. That is the psychological aspects. One becomes generous, one becomes miserly, one becomes very intelligent, one becomes very dull. All these various psychological variations can be accounted for by the consciousness aspect. And the rigidity of health and all that, they follow very clearly laws. And if there were no laws, then medicine would not be possible. Medicine is possible because you know that if this symptom is there, then there is this cause. And that is the law. So that is exactly what Shiv is saying. Both things are, you can understand, if you start with consciousness as the basis, creator of everything else. Okay, so psychological actions. For the body is not mere unconscious matter. It's a structure of a secretly conscious energy that has taken in it. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, he discusses body consciousness. Okay, we have a consciousness which is body consciousness. In fact, very interesting body consciousness. We don't think about it, but the best example is how the body cures itself. Okay, it cures itself. Suppose you have a bleeding, you don't think that, oh, I have to stop the wound now. You don't think mentally. It's body consciousness that repairs itself. It is again adapting means to ends. It starts coagulating the blood and sealing the wound. Okay, so these are one of the best examples of the body consciousness. There is a consciousness even in the body which is absolutely physical. But of course, there are even better, so many images you can give for the body consciousness. The coughing, the sneezing, the closing of your eyes, okay, the winking or whatever you want, okay. What is it called? I think it is winking only, okay. It goes, it takes rest. So all these are body consciousness. Another very interesting example which Sri Aurobindo gives about body consciousness is when you are writing, okay. When you are writing, in the beginning, when you are a child, you have to learn A, B, C, D. If I have to write cat, I have to remember, oh, it starts with a C. Then I have to put an A, and then I have to put a T. But once you become an adult, that's not the process at all. The hand itself is writing CAT without mental intervention. Okay, that's another interesting thing. So there is both consciousness as well as force, matter, okay, law. It's a structure, the body is a structure of a secretly conscious energy that has taken form in it. Itself occultly conscious, occultly means not physical, non-physical, conscious. It is at the same time the vehicle of expression of an overt consciousness that has emerged and is self-aware in its physical energy substance. The physical energy substance, 3 words, it is the body with prana in it. If the prana is not there, the energy is not there, it will only be matter. So physical energy substance is the body with a vitality in it. Okay? The body's functionings are a necessary machinery or instrumentation for the movements of this mental inhabitant. There has to be certain law in the body, otherwise everything will be chaotic. There has to be a law. So that's what he's saying. It is only by setting the corporeal instruments in motion, okay, that the conscious being emerging, evolving in it, can transmit its mind formations, will formations, and turn them into a physical manifestation of itself in matter. Now, let's have look very carefully why he is using certain words. Okay, always when Sridhar is using words, he is adding extra meaning to it. Now, look at he is saying the body is functioning. Here he is using the word body, are a necessary machinery or instrumentation for the movements of this mental inhabitant. Okay, that's the basis. There's a basis, and the basis has to be very, very orderly. And if it has to be orderly, it has to follow certain laws. It cannot be chaotic. If it is chaotic, how will the mind deal with it? The mind will have difficulty in dealing with something which is constantly changing. Okay, so it's only by setting the corporeal instrument. Instead of using the word body, he is using the word corporeal instrument. It's an instrument. So he has added the meaning of your body is only an instrument and it's in motion. Okay, it's a corporeal instrument in motion. How he uses words to convey extra meanings, you see? It's an instrument. You don't think of it as an instrument. You think of it as yourself, which is a complete wrong thing. It's only an instrument. Okay, that the conscious being. Okay, you can use the word soul if you want for very, very fundamental understanding, very, very primary understanding. You can use the word soul. There is a soul which is using your body, using your vital, and using your mind. They are all instruments. Emerging, slowly this conscious being is emerging. First it emerges in the form of life, then it emerges in the form of mind, and then finally at the spiritual level it emerges as the true being. Okay, yes, true being. You realize that you are the true being. Evolving in it can transmit its mind formations, will formations, and turn them into a physical manifestation of itself in matter. When the evolution comes up to the mind level, the mind is now capable of infusing its own thoughts into the body through the brain. Okay, it also infuses its own will. Okay, you also have a will. The will is part of the life. Of course, the will is everywhere. There can be a soul will, there can be a mental will, there can also be a life will. Even the body has got a will. If the body doesn't have a will, how will it repair itself? Okay, so that's it. So they're saying because already they are there. Because of involution, it is possible to understand psychological functions as well as physiological functions. The capacity, the processes of the instrument must to a certain extent reshape the mind formations in their transition from mental shape into physical expression. Okay, I'll stop here. What he's saying is that when 2 glasses of water, one is colored blue, one is colored red, when they mix, just like mind is mixing with the matter, and life is mixing with matter. Each one influences the other. That's what he's saying. It is not that mind completely changes matter. Life also does not completely change matter. Matter also is having an influence on life, and matter also is having an influence on mind. It becomes trapped. So it's an interchange. To a certain extent, mind puts its own freedom into matter, but matter also is restricting the operations of mind in the body. That's what he's saying. Okay, there's an intermixture. There's a whole chapter on this. Ascent and integration. Okay, integration. That means each one is involved in the other. When there is an evolution, life is already there and mind is already there in different planes of consciousness. But when life enters into matter, there are produced living creatures. But these living creatures are not absolutely life, are not either absolutely matter. There's a combination of the two. Each one is contributing to the other. That's what he's saying here. Now look at the sentence, you'll see that. The capacity, the processes of the instrument must to a certain extent reshape the mind. The mind also is being reshaped by the matter, okay? And matter itself becomes brain substance. It is brain substance that is matter now capable of mental thinking. That's what he's saying, okay? The mind formations in their transition from mental shape into physical expression. Mental shape, mind without matter. There is a plane of consciousness which is mental, and that there, if you are there, then you are not imprisoned by the body. That's what he's saying. Physical expression. Its workings are necessary and must exercise their influence before that expression can become actual. This sentence means nothing but when the mind is coming in, it loses its power of absolute freedom and becomes subject to the rigidities and laws of matter of the body. That's what he's saying. The bodily instrument may even in some directions dominate the user. In fact, most of the time it happens like that. Who is the user? The user is the soul, the consciousness. So Sridhar is saying the bodily instrument may even in some directions dominate its user. The body is the most important and it dominates the user. It may too by a force of habit suggest or create involutionary reactions of the consciousness inhabiting it before the waking mind and will can control or interfere. Okay? So it may too, the body may too by a force of habit suggest or create involuntary reactions of the consciousness inhabiting it before the waking mind and will can control or interfere. When he is talking of waking mind and will, he is talking at the human level. But at the animal level, the waking mind and will is not there. So body is dictating terms. In other words, animals behave absolutely according to laws. And this is the whole science behind it. It's called behaviorism. The Russians were the ones who first started examining this, and they found that the animal works absolutely, the body functioning of an animal is completely according to laws. Behaviorism. There are very interesting experiments were there, they did, and they found that it behaves absolutely according to laws. One very famous example of that was whenever they used to give food to a dog, okay, they used to ring a bell. Just an interesting experiment. So as soon as they ring the bell, okay, the dog knew that it is time for food. But that's not all. What used to happen is it used to start salivating. In other words, the body is working according to the laws. As soon as the bell is rung, it starts salivating. The saliva starts coming out. So this is the science of behaviorism. That's what Sridhar is mentioning here. You can see very clearly. It may too by force of habit. Okay, the habit is the saliva coming out under certain conditions. Suggest or create involuntary reactions. The saliva is not by a voluntary reaction at all. Okay, of the consciousness inhabiting it before the waking mind and will can control or interfere. But when waking mind and will come in, like in a human being, to a certain extent, you can control your bodily reactions. They need not be absolutely involuntary. Okay, so we can control. When I have to answer the call of nature, okay, I can control it. The animal does not. It does not even try. Okay, when the call of nature comes, it will start urinating or it will defecate. It will do whatever it has to do. But man has got mind, can control body to a certain extent. Okay, suppose I am hungry. Okay, I can control that. So that is what is meaning by waking mind and will. That happens only at the human level. Okay, so see how carefully they are using word, but we have to supply the examples to understand what he's saying. Okay, so but before the waking mind and will come, that means in the animal level, the body dictates terms. That's what he's saying. The bodily instrument may, even in some directions, dominate its user. The user is the consciousness or the soul. It may too, by force of habit, suggest or create involuntary reactions. Okay, the example I gave you of saliva very clearly says that. Okay, inhabiting it before the waking mind and will can control or interfere. All this is possible because the body has a subconscious consciousness of its own. That's what we discussed just now. Okay, coughing, sneezing. Okay, the body repairing itself. Okay, when I am sitting and reading and a mosquito bites me, my hand will automatically go there and try to get rid of it. I'm not thinking about it. It happens by the body consciousness of its own, which counts in our total self-expression. Even if we look at this outer instrumentation only, we can conclude that body determines mind, but this is only a minor truth. And the major truth is that the mind determines body. So Sri is saying that body determines mind, you can say, if you see only the body. And that's the science of behaviorism. Okay. But at a higher level, Srimda used to control his, even we do control our body to a certain extent. Now we can control ourselves. Suppose there is greed, we can control ourselves. Mind is more powerful than the body. When there is anger also, we can control ourselves. However much the hormones may generate things which will increase our anger, still we can control it. Okay. So that's what. Yes, tell me.
I have a question. Here,
Yes.
mind means man or buddhi?
He is using mind in the sense of not buddhi. If you, Shilpa, if you use the word buddhi, it is the part of the mind which is capable of logic and detachment. Okay, reason. So buddhi, when we use the word buddhi, it normally means that. As I have told you, mind has got three planes, even at our level. There is a physical mind, but that is absolutely mechanical. Physical mind is absolutely mechanical. There is a vital mind where will starts acting to a certain extent. And there is a buddhi which you reason. But pure reason, even if it is not there, buddhi starts controlling the body. It starts to a certain extent. So when your question is a valid one, but buddhi also has got many shades. Na? Even those who don't have rationality and don't have reason, they can control their body to a certain extent, isn't it? Yeah, so mind in a very general sense. Mind means if you, that which can, well, the mind is capable of thought, okay, and will also. So that's what it means. Okay, so there's an interaction between them. That's what it's mainly saying. So, in fact, I told you one example, very interesting example. One day, Srimda had bleeding in the eye. Okay, it became absolutely red, and normally when that happens, the hemorrhage in the eye, it takes 3-4 days to clear. It's nothing serious. After 3-4 days, it's clear. The first time I got that hemorrhage in the eye, I got damn nervous. I went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, there's nothing. It will just disappear in no time at all. Okay. It took 3-4 days. But Srimdo, when he had this hemorrhage in the eye, Champaklal used to attend to him. Champaklal said, sir, your eye is red. So he said, you come back in 2 hours time and see. And Srimdo, which is force, not mental force. Huh? This is not mental force. This is spiritual force. He completely removed that hemorrhage no sign of any red in the eye after 2 hours. So as you keep going higher and higher, mind and consciousness starts becoming more and more powerful. That's what he's saying. At the animal level, there is a mind, the physical mind, but it is subject to laws, no freedom. In man also, largely in the body and the vital, there is no freedom. Even the mind, there is no freedom, but it becomes less. It is more free. The mind is more free than the vital. The vital is more free than the body. But the body follows laws. Okay, and just think about it. We have 2 doctors on the panel. Okay, so if you don't have laws in the physical body, how are you going to cure? Medicine won't be possible. We know that if this symptom is there, this is the cause. So there has to be law. There has to be a rigidity of process. Okay, so that's what Sanjay is saying, and he's going into great detail to explain all this. Then, in this view, in which view? The view that there is consciousness and also there is a force in the body and a mechanical. There is freedom, but there is also law that does not allow freedom. In this view, the view that we have just now discussed, this hypothesis, a still deeper truth becomes conceivable. A spiritual entity ensouling the substance that veils it is the original determinant of both mind and body. Until now, he has been discussing only body and mind. Now he says, I will go a little beyond mind. There is actually a spiritual principle in you, and that's the soul. And that controls really everything. Okay? But even that, when it comes down to the body is subjecting the soul even to its own laws. That's why there is imprisonment. You don't even know that you are soul. Okay? So I read that sentence again. Okay? Where is it gone? Yeah, in this view, a still deeper truth, not only mind, but even more, becomes conceivable. But note the word conceivable. He is not imposing the view on you. He is saying it's possible to conceive of it. Although he knows very well that it is a fact. Okay. All through Life Divine, he is just taking you by the hand and trying to convince you. Look at this, it is possible. Look at this, it is possible. That's the language. Okay. Truth becomes conceivable. A spiritual entity ensouling the substance that veils it is the original determinant of both mind and body. So there is a body, there is a vital, there is a mind, but there is something even superior to all that, that's the soul. Or the soul is a consciousness, if you want. Consciousness at the soul level, or the several self level. Okay. So on the other side, in the opposite order of process, that by which the mind can transmit its ideas and commands to the body, can train it to be an instrument for new action, can even so impress it with its habitual demands or orders that the physical instinct carries them out automatically, even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. Those also more unusual but well attested, by which to an extraordinary and hardly limitable extent, the mind can learn to determine the reactions of the body, even to the overriding of its normal law or conditions of action. Okay. The sentence is huge and it goes on, but we will stop here. What he's saying is that the higher you go in consciousness, the mind starts dictating terms even to the body. At our level, the mind can dictate terms to the body to a certain extent. I can control my hunger, I can control my anger, I can control my body needs, okay? Even if I have to a certain extent, I can do that. But when you go to the spiritual level, the control can be almost full. That's what he's saying, okay? So if you look at that carefully, you will see that. On the other side, which is the other side? Not body influencing mind, but consciousness now, the spiritual consciousness influencing the body. On the other side, in the opposite order of process, that by which the mind can transmit its ideas and commands to the body, can train it to be an instrument for new action. The old biological laws may not apply. That's what he's saying. Can even so impress it with its habitual demands or orders that the physical instinct carries them out automatically, even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. Once you put the spiritual consciousness puts a certain changes the laws in the body. Okay, suppose I'll give you a pakka example. Okay, I feel hungry when I need to eat. It's a law. The body is saying I need to eat. But the mind can, the spiritual consciousness can tell the body, stop feeling hungry. Even when you need, stop feeling hungry. The mind will obey, the body will obey. That's what he's saying. Okay, because obeying is a law, and that law becomes the law has changed now because of spiritual influence. That's what he's saying. Okay, so this is how you can control your anger also. Okay, you can control even your other feelings also. Emotions also can be controlled. The consciousness is the final arbiter of all these things. That's how he's saying. See how he's going step by step. No? So first he told you that life, when it enters into the matter, they react upon each other. Then when mind comes in, the reaction also is there, but there is more and more freedom. The mind can impose certain things on the. Now he's telling you that the spiritual consciousness can absolutely control the body also and change its habits. That's the interesting part. Okay, so which is habitual demands and orders, the physical instinct carries them out automatically, even when the mind is no longer consciously willing them. Okay? Once you change the body consciousness, you don't need to do that every time. It becomes normal. Those also more unusual but well attested, by which to an extraordinary and hardly limitable extent, the mind can learn to determine the reactions of the body, even to the overriding of its normal law or conditions of action. One very good example of this is the levitation. The mind can impose certain laws on the body, which can even cancel the old laws. So the law of gravitation in the body feels that I must be grounded very solidly on the, that also can be cancelled. That's what he's saying. Okay. Hardly limitable extent, mind can learn to determine the reaction of the body, even to the overriding of the normal law. Okay. The normal laws, hunger and all these things. Okay. Sleep, you can control your sleep. The normal law is sleep. But when you are in a spiritual consciousness, you can cancel the need for sleep. That's what he's saying. Okay. The normal law can be cancelled. Or conditions of action. In fact, we know very well, mother used to not really sleep ever. Okay. But she used to lie down on the couch for 2-3 hours. Sri Aurobindo also, we never slept. Whole night he used to work and answer letters, and only at 6 o'clock in the morning he used to stop and rest up to 8 o'clock. In one of the letters to Amal Kiran, he writes that. Okay, because Amal Kiran used to constantly pester him with, please correct my essay, please do this, please do that. And Sri Aurobindo used to say, I have no time. This is my schedule. Look, where is the time for me? And he gave me a schedule. Whole night he used to write letters. Okay, and finally, at 6 o'clock in the morning, he used to stop, and 2 hours only rest, but not sleep, body rest. Okay, that you can do. So they say these and otherwise unaccountable aspects of the relation between these two elements of our being, the two elements of our being, mind and matter, okay, become easily understandable because both are there. By the way, there's a very interesting, this is a huge question in all philosophy everywhere, in the West and everywhere, mind and matter. Which is the more powerful, mind or matter? Science is saying matter is more powerful. So this question is a little fun, and I think most of you have heard of it also. They say in philosophy, what is mind and what is matter? So when the question is what is mind, the answer is, does it really matter? And what is matter? The answer is, never mind. It's a very funny way of putting it, but it doesn't solve the problem. Okay, so this is pardon?
Mind, it doesn't matter.
So there's a little bit of fun in philosophy. Okay, so what is matter? Never mind. What is mind? Does it matter? Okay, so we come to this now. So is perfectly understandable. For it is secret consciousness in the living matter that receives from its greater companion. Okay, the secret consciousness in the living matter. Okay, the physical. Okay, tell me one word. Secret consciousness in the living matter. Now, note that living matter is body with mind in it. Okay, and the secret consciousness is the physical consciousness. Okay, so if the secret consciousness in the living matter is a physical consciousness that receives from its greater companion. Now, what is that? The mind or the spiritual consciousness. The greater companion. Now, interestingly, how is describing? Consciousness divides itself up into several. There is an elder brother, younger brother, and a middle brother. Okay, the youngest brother is the physical consciousness. The middle brother is the vital consciousness. Then there is a mental consciousness, which is the elder. Okay, and finally you have the highest brother, who is the spiritual consciousness. But they are all related. Greater companion. Okay, it is this in the body that, in its own involved and occult fashion, perceives or feels the demand on it and obeys the emerged or evolved consciousness which presides over the body. Okay, note that word, presides over the body. Okay, so examples of which presides over the body, I have made a note: sleepwalking, automatic writing, planchette. These are all, the body obeys the consciousness blindly, like a law. Okay, so that can happen. Finally, the conception of a divine mind and will creating the universe becomes justifiable. So see how he is leading you and holding you by the hand and slowly taking you and showing. He's saying life is entering into matter, mind is entering into matter, but when spiritual comes into matter, that you will see that becomes conceivable. Finally, again he uses the word conception. The conception of a divine mind and will creating the cosmos becomes justifiable. Now it is understandable. While at the same time, the perplexing elements in it, which our reasoning mentality refuses to ascribe to an arbitrary fiat of the creator, that's what the scientist is doing. He refuses to ascribe anything to God. Arbitrary fiat of the creator, using the words as though the scientist is replying to the spiritual man. Spiritual man is saying God is creating the world. And scientists will reply, no, no, no. That's an arbitrary fiat of the creator I can't accept. Okay? Arbitrary fiat of the creator find their explanation as inevitable phenomena of a consciousness emerging with difficulty out of its opposite, but with the mission to override these contrary phenomena and manifest by slow and difficult evolution its greater reality and true nature. So this is what he's saying, that if you proceed on the basis, on the hypothesis of a consciousness creating the world, then you can see, if you go step by step, that it is the mind is the spiritual consciousness is the creator of the world, and it is creating dense conditions of its own being and enters into it. And now there is a slow evolution out of that. There's an involution and an evolution. That becomes very understandable. Starting even from the observation of physical life, we see that there is consciousness and we see also that there is force. So this is the only way you can explain. And if you explain it this way, it becomes very understandable. Therefore, it is very, very possible. Okay. He's still not saying that's the only truth. Okay. So now I read out the summary of what he's saying. We went into details, but we go to the summary now. Mind influences body at a higher level, just as body dominates mind at a lower level. Okay. At the animal level, mind is dominating, body is dominating mind, even to the normal human being. But at this higher level, the mind influences the body. But finally, it is spirit that is master of matter and is slowly emerging from the dark, tenebrous substance of matter. It then becomes possible to conceive of a divinized body, a supramentalized matter. We have lifted matter, we have lifed matter. Okay. We have life matter. We have put life into matter, and the result is insects, animals. Then we have mentalized matter, brain, and then the result is men. Then why not supermentalized matter, the divine body? That also should be possible. Why should you stop only at the mental level? That's what I say. Okay. So it is now 8:30. We have 5 minutes. What do we do? Shall we stop here? Or shall we go to the next one? It's quite big. The next one is more than a page. So I think we better stop here.
I have a question. My question is
Yes.
that we all are supposed to have an aura around us, which
Yes.
is supposed to be a body of vibrations.
Yes. Yes.
So
it's a consciousness, and consciousness is vibration.
So like
energy. Yeah. Go on.
Is there any way one can, in a quantitative and qualitative manner, measure that?
I don't know if you can measure, but it should be possible, not by physical instruments perhaps, but it can be measured. I'll tell you. In fact, there is one Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She has done a good deal of work on this. Pranic healing and all that, when they do say, it is not nonsense, okay? Reiki and pranic healing, they are attending more to the aura than to the body, okay? They try to repair it at a subtler level. So it is possible. In fact, there is what is called, what photography? It's called Kirlian photography.
Kirlian photography.
That's right. Yeah, you can measure. You can visually measure the energy coming out of a leaf. If you photograph a leaf, anything living gives out an aura. Okay. And if you photograph that by the Kirlian method, what happens is you can see the aura. But you tear that leaf from the tree and put it on the table, and after 3 hours you measure again, you take a photograph, no energy. So life is always producing an aura. It's true. And it can be measured in this sense that you can visually see it. But it should be possible, because after all, you are measuring the intensity of TV waves, radio waves. Okay, you control it. If you open your TV channel, they will tell you how to control and increase your this thing. There are many variants. What is the broadcasting? The
frequencies can be adjusted.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So it can be measured, certainly. It can be measured. And those who have experience of this, they have seen that when you are sleeping, your aura becomes much smaller. Okay, maybe it's about, usually it's only about 1 centimeter around the body. But if you are awakened, okay, that's 1 centimeter becomes 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters, and even more, because that becomes the aura, it becomes the halo around the head, okay, which people can see. So when you put a halo around saints, it is not imagination. It is really that light is there, which becomes so much bigger. And that aura can extend even up to 10 miles. In fact, that's a cosmic consciousness. In Sri Aurobindo case, you remember, mother is coming 2-3 miles outside Pondicherry. She is sensing that she is entering Sri Aurobindo's aura. So with the evolution of consciousness, your aura will increase. It's very interesting, but even when you are running a 100-meter race, okay, when you are awake, the aura increases in size. Now from 1 centimeter, it can go to slightly more. When you are energetic, you are working, you are fully conscious, okay, and working, your aura increases a little bit. But when you are sleeping, it decreases. That's how they explain. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says something very interesting. She says that you can train your eyes, even physical eyes, to see the auras. She says it can be done in 3-4 months of practice. What you do, you sit in a semi-dark room, okay, and start looking at something living, okay, and try to see the aura. Try, okay, put your will and see. She says at the end of 3-4 months, you will be able to see the aura. So whether it's a fact or not, I don't know. It depends on the intensity of the person who is wanting to do that. But yes, it can be measured, it can be seen, it can even be controlled. Okay, your aura will protect you. It can protect you against that famous example of mothers walking in a very concentrated manner in Paris, the Bois de Boulogne, and that tram passed and she was thrown. She would have got run over, but her aura protected her and she was thrown away. Not a conscious being, not conscious movement. The body aura threw her back. And she says that the tram conductor was cursing her and shouting and swearing at her. What the hell are you doing? So that it can protect you. It can also protect you against disease, okay, and vibrations. You can actually control your aura to not allow anything to come into you. The other day we were discussing that, na? That everything comes into you, thoughts and vibrations, all this come into you, even at the physical level. Food you eat is coming into you. As Sri Aurobindo says, put a watchman at your emotional level, put a watchman at your mind level. Okay, so that's what Sri Aurobindo says. Okay, so we stop here today, 5:35, 8:35. See you
Okay.
tomorrow. See you
Merci
tomorrow.
beaucoup.
Okay, au revoir.
Bye-bye.